Hi, this is Nahi. Today we're going to talk about SMART goals, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples so that you know how to use them to really elevate your success. Now, you may have heard of SMART goals before. A lot of people use them, and people tend to even assign different words to the acronym. So the S stands for specific, the M stands for measurable, the A stands for attainable, although some people also use the word actionable. The R stands for realistic, although I've also seen people use the word relevant. And the T stands for time-based, and I've also seen people use trackable. The whole point of SMART goals is to be able to write your goal down in a way that makes it easier for you to actually achieve your goal. And let's go through a couple of examples. So it's kind of easy to write SMART goals for something like running a marathon, because that's really tangible and specific on its own. But let's say you have a goal like, I want to become a better leader this year. That is a little bit harder. So we're going to go through both of those examples so that you can get a feel for what it would be like to use the SMART goal format in both cases. So let's start with specific. So the way to think about the specific in SMART goals is, if someone were observing you, how would they know you've accomplished the goal? What would they see as evidence? Now, with a marathon, it's easy. You started at the beginning of the race and you crossed the finish line, and maybe you were seen running throughout the marathon. So very easy to see evidence as to whether or not you've completed your marathon. But how would someone observing you know that you've become a more effective leader? That one's a little bit trickier. And there are a lot of ways that you can decide that you want to look at this. Maybe you want to look at better leadership in terms of people want to work for me. Maybe you look at it as, my team's more engaged in meetings, or my team performs better, but they achieve their goals. And so I'm going to sort of take credit for that. Or maybe I run 360 assessments and I'm looking at my scores and I'm looking at the comments that come in. Now, you can choose anything, but asking yourself, okay, specifically, how would somebody observing me notice whether I'm more effective as a leader, really gets you to think more deeply about your goal and forces you to come up with something more tangible to actually get you on track to becoming a better leader. Because if you just say, I want to become a better leader, it's too vague for you to actually live into. Let's take the next letter, M. M stands for measurable. In the same sense, the question for M is, how will you measure your progress? And typically it's, how will you measure your progress as you're working to achieve this goal? So again, as you're training for your marathon, you can come up with some really specific ways to measure your progress. So for example, while I'm training, each week I'll run more miles. And in the actual marathon, I'll be able to measure my progress by by seeing the mile markers and seeing how far I've gone. But again, becoming a better leader, how will you measure your progress? Will you pay attention to the interactions that you have with your team? Will you look for feedback from your team or from other people in your organization? Is there some way that you can measure the degree of influence you have in your organization? Do you want to look at turnover data? Have you had high turnover on your team so you can directly measure that your turnover has decreased? Do you run multiple 360 surveys so that you actually have hard data that changes over time? Or do you come up with more casual surveys that you can run with your team and look at the data over your time? So again, just thinking about that question when you have a vague goal, like I want to become a better leader, forces you to think about how you're going to measure it. And this helps you lean in to achieving that goal more effectively. Let's take the A, attainable or actionable. What skills do you have that you can rely on? So this letter forces you to think about the skills that you'll be using that will actually make this goal achievable for you. And actually, I think some people use the A in this acronym and use the word achievable as well. So the whole idea is you can come up with any goal that you want. And if you want to run a marathon, but you don't have a skill set around running. You don't even know how to run, or you don't have the stamina to do cardio exercise for more than, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes, then you really need to think about what skills will help you elevate your ability. So this A is all about, do I have the ability to achieve this goal? And it forces you, again, to realistically ask yourself, what are the skills that I'll be using? Now, running a marathon, I'm good at running. I like training. I have the discipline to stick to a training schedule. But becoming a better leader, again, is more vague. So you have to think, I take feedback well. Well, that's a good skill. That's helpful. That way, as you take the feedback, you'll get some idea of how you're doing. I can sense people's engagement and energy levels. Okay, that'll help you. I'm practicing becoming a better listener. That should help you. I can give clear directions. So again, writing a list. A lot of times I'll have people write a list of what the skills are that they have already or they want to improve in order to make this goal more achievable, more attainable. Okay, the R stands for realistic, and I've seen some people say relevant. When you get to realistic, this is not so much about the skills that you have, but it's more a question of, is this realistic given all my other commitments? Like, am I actually going to do it? It's great to ask yourself this, and again, really get real with yourself. What I have people do is outline a plan or list the steps that they're going to take, and then ask themselves, does this make sense based on other priorities? So for running a marathon, some good questions to ask is, do I actually have the time I need to train? Can I block off, a couple hours most weekdays and a big chunk of time on the weekends to do a longer run? Am I good at sticking to my training schedule even when invited to do something else? So when people say, hey, let's go out to breakfast Saturday morning, can I say, and do I trust myself to say, I'm going to do my run in the morning, but I'd love to meet you for brunch or lunch afterwards? Will the weather be a factor? If it's raining or cold or snowy outside, will you tell yourself that you can't run? Or do you go to a gym or or have a treadmill inside that you would use when the weather's bad outside? So those are some things to think about, and thinking about those things in advance makes it more realistic that you will be able to achieve the goal. When it comes to becoming a better leader, again, you've got a lot of things to think about. One thing to think about is, if I want to become a better leader, what are the things that I have to do? Well, I probably have to run better meetings. I probably have to stick to my scheduled one-on-ones if I have those with my team. Typically, that's where your leadership is going to shine through. And often leaders will skip their one-on-ones when they feel stressed and overwhelmed, and they feel like that's the one meeting they can skip. And unfortunately, that's usually the one meeting that really bites them, later on. Give better feedback. Be more direct, but also more kind. Be more clear about vision and progress by communicating more effectively. So a lot of this leadership improvement may involve how you communicate and interact with your team. So thinking about that in advance and thinking about the actual steps, the actual things that you would have to do to become a better leader, and then asking yourself realistically, do I have the time to have regular one-on-ones with my team members and stick to them? Do I have the discipline to really focus and practice listening better? Do I have the interest in running better meetings and learning how to be more effective in running my meetings? So these are all questions to ask yourself, and there really aren't any right or wrong answers. The idea of using the SMART goal acronym to flush out your goals is to just help you write them in a way that will make it easier for you to achieve them. So the point is that forcing yourself to go through each letter in the word SMART forces you to think more deeply about your goal. And so that's kind of the crux of all of it. Okay, the last letter, T, time-based. Some will say trackable. The question you ask yourself is, what is your time frame for achieving the goal? And do you have milestones? So if you're running a marathon, it's really easy, again, to do that. You sign up for a specific marathon that you want to run, and let's say it's in September, and let's say September is 8 months away. Then you might say, okay, well, by month 7, I should be able to run 22 miles on my long run each weekend. And maybe by 6 months, I want to run 18 miles. Maybe by my 3rd month, I want to be running 8 miles. Now, for becoming a better leader, again, how do I track this over time? That's a much more complicated question. But let's say that you've decided that you're going to use your communication skills as your vehicle for becoming a better leader. And that the different ways that you're going to communicate more effectively is you're going to develop a communication cadence with your team. So you're going to have maybe one-on-ones with everybody every 2 weeks. Or let's say that you're going to work on making your meetings more productive, and you're going to observe the team and see how engaged they are. Maybe the people on your team have KPIs, and you want to make sure that they're on target and on track to meet their KPIs. So you might be able to say something like, my performance review will be in December, and by September, I want to make sure there's no turnover. There's an engaged team. They're all on track to meet or exceed their KPIs. I'm having noticeable, positive, and productive meetings with them. Now, this is definitely more complex, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. You may decide that becoming a better leader is too vague of a goal, and you may decide to break that down into something more specific, like become a better listener or run better meetings. You may have a conversation with your own manager and talk about leadership and say, okay, as you observe me in my leadership role, where do you see my 1 or 2 biggest opportunities for growth? And then you might want to take one of those areas and really focus on it and turn that into SMART goal format. But again, however you do it, the whole point of SMART goals is to force you to think about these questions. And with some goals, like running a marathon, it's very easy, straightforward, and tangible. But for a lot of goals that we set that help us become more effective at work, they're a lot more vague. And because they're more vague, more intangible about us growing, sometimes it's harder to put these goals in SMART goal format. But just putting yourself through the challenge of it all, it changes your thinking. And it changes your thinking in a way that really increases the chance that you're going to achieve that goal. If you take a vague goal and try your best, even if you fail at writing it in SMART goal format, it gives you a clearer plan. It prevents you from forgetting or getting distracted. It helps you see progress and maintain momentum. And overall, it increases your chance of success. So try it and see how it works for you.